thank you for coming out tonight, just before Brisbane's Ekka holiday. It must have been tempting to stay at home, but glad to see that many of you are here and are contributing to the development of the Women in AI community here in Queensland. So my name's Sue Kay. I'm the CEO of the Queensland AI Hub, and we're very pleased to be collaborating with Women in AI. When I first started with Queensland AI Hub, I did wonder about what we could be doing to support the community of women who are operating in the AI space here in Queensland, and then was fortunate to discover the Women in AI organisation. And I'm always one who believes that you shouldn't reinvent the wheel, and to discover that there was actually an international organisation that is set up to help to promote community amongst women operating in AI. I thought, well, let's just support that initiative. And then we were really fortunate because just at about the same time, Adriana moved to Brisbane, and she was already familiar with the Women in AI group and very committed to making sure that we saw something happen here in Queensland. So thank you very much, Adriana, for making this happen. I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the lands on which we're meeting, the Turrbal and Yagara people, and also for everyone on our live stream, acknowledge the traditional owners of the various lands on which you may be watching this live stream. And I'd like to acknowledge elders past, present and emerging. But I'd like to hand over now to Adriana Bora to tell you a bit more about Women in AI and to proceed with tonight's event. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you very much, Sue. My name is Adriana, and I'm here representing the Women in AI. And I am supported by Tasmika and Sally, who are also part of the Women in AI. And I also want to thank you so much for making the time to join us today. Before moving into the event, I would like to give you a bit of a background of Women in AI and to say that, in fact, as Sue was mentioning, Women in AI, it is a global community. It started in France, and we have the mission to increase female representation and participation in AI. And we are now reaching over 150 countries. We have ambassadors in 40 of them, one of them here in Australia, and our members are increasing constantly now, reaching over 6,000 across the globe. So we're really excited now to be here in Queensland and to try to bring some of this existing knowledge and infrastructure that has been developed across the globe, but of course to adapt it to the beautiful uniqueness of this region. And we have launched the chapter back in June, where we asked the community what they would like to see from Women in AI here in Queensland. And well, the majority told us that they would actually like to have, for a start, more networking events, an opportunity to meet other women working in the field and to learn from each other. So we know now that the community of AI in Queensland is growing, and we saw that there are events regarding technical papers reading or ethical AI readings. So based on the feedback from the community and our own experiences here in Queensland, we wanted to kickstart this series of events where we are talking about the career journeys of women in AI. And we really want to give an opportunity to stellar women to share their experience, and also for the other women to learn, and to co-create events where we are helping each other enter the field of AI and learn how to continue building a career in the field. So today we are here for the first event where we're just discussing in general how to build your career in AI. And a very important element of this series that we want to bring is to have a student moderating the panels. And today we have Sally with us. Sally is a double degree studying business and engineering at QUT. But Also, Sally's been doing incredible work in promoting gender equality, also with the Women Forum in Business at QT, and recently joining also Women in AI. So with no further ado, Sally, I will pass you the mic, and I will be welcoming you to this panel and hoping to hear a wonderful discussion. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, Adriana, for that lovely introduction. So sitting with me here are some esteemed panelists who we'll be hearing from tonight. And so just to introduce, we have Carrie Mengenson next to me, who aspires to develop new methods for statistics and machine learning and to apply these challenges in the health and environmental industries. She is privileged to work with teams of talented researchers, practitioners, and students. Carrie is a distinguished professor of statistics at QUT, director for the QUT Centre for Data Science, and co-founder of the Australian Data Science Network. Carrie is an elected fellow of the Australian Academy of Science, Academy of Social Sciences of Australia, and the Queensland Academy of Arts and Sciences, which is very impressive. Next to her in the middle, we have Juliette Murphy, who is a professional water resources engineer turned entrepreneur, inspired by social good and solving the big impact problems. After experiencing the devastation of the 2011 floods in Queensland and the 2013 Calgary floods in Canada, she was motivated to improve flood emergency responses. Juliette co-founded FloodMapp in an aim to improve safety and prevent damage. FloodMapp is an AI-powered rapid flood model, purpose-built for flood forecasting and emergency management. Prior to FloodMapp, Juliette worked as a water resource engineer with over 12 years of experience in industry in flood modelling, hydrology, and water resource engineering across Australia, North America, and Southeast Asia. In each of her roles, Juliette has gained a breadth of expertise in hydrologic and hydraulic modelling, GIS, mapping, software development, and project management. Also very impressive. And finally, at the end, we have Tracy Kay. Tracy joined Databricks in 2020 to lead the Asia Pacific professional services business. Every day, she gets to help data and AI teams solve the world's toughest problems. Tracy's journey to AI took over 20 years and was not linear, as I think we'll find the case a lot tonight. After starting her career as a web developer, Tracy quickly discovered her real passion and value was leveraging emerging technology to drive transformational change in organizations. This led her through user experience design to enterprise applications, followed by cloud, machine learning, and artificial intelligence. Throughout this journey, Tracy has always focused on developing the capability and careers of the people around her through team leadership, mentorship, and participation in community groups. Can we give them a welcome for tonight? So I know I'm definitely looking forward to what they have to say. And so moving on to our first question tonight, which I think will be a good one to break the ice a bit. So I know everyone has a bit of a different interpretation of what actually is AI or artificial intelligence. And sometimes it's not actually clear if we're all talking about the same thing. So I'm going to ask each of the panelists, and welcome to have a conversation here, but what do you understand by the term AI and how would you define it?
I go first. Right. So I see AI as an umbrella term. I see artificial intelligence as the narrow definition, which then can go across a number of different what we might call it, is the use of analysis and tools and learning to learn about the system. So be able to understand a system digitally and through data, and then to be able to learn and be able to update. So that's sort of artificial intelligence, right? But also we can see AI as then being an encompassing term for many other different areas. So I work in statistics and machine learning, and I see machine learning, deep learning, statistics, information science, data science, and a lot of the domain areas of that involve data, all under the heading of AI.
That was incredible. I was passing it to Carrie first as the expert because I felt like I needed to think a moment for inspiration about how I was going to answer that question. But the way I think about it, and I'm by no means an expert at all, but I think I look back at my career and think that, you know, I used to run a lot of models that were physics-based models. So it was, you know, looking at how much rainfall falls from the sky, how much will infiltrate in the ground to then calculate some runoff volume of how high the rivers will get. And the models I used were always very sort of trial and error based, where you were calibrating it based on some observations and just having a go and trying different things until you could get a good fit. But what I see the role of kind of AI and how it applies to our industry is very much we're getting help of like really powerful machines that we maybe didn't have, you know, in the 60s, 70s, and how we would approach that problem to apply a lot of statistics and computational power and like matrix mathematics to, you know, find the smart way to find the patterns in that data that as humans we couldn't find before, to kind of find that fit. And what I'm seeing do it better than a lot of the, you know, physics-based approaches that we used to use. So yeah, I find it it's just adding like bringing a whole lot of efficiency to solving problems that we maybe couldn't, you know, didn't have the efficiency to solve before at scales that we didn't have it to solve before.
I'll just violently agree with you both. I also think it's an umbrella term, and I think it's actually changing quite a lot. So I guess my simple version is it's about sensing and then about processing and about acting. And when you think about sensing, like we were talking about this earlier, right? You're taking all of this live data from weather sensors all over Australia. But also we've all got like little phones in our pockets that it's picking up data all the time, like GPS data, et cetera, that's all getting fed somewhere. So I think AI is moving from something that was over there to something that's kind of everywhere now. And things like the cloud is why we have all of the processing power. So now that it's accessible and it's affordable, it's something that like more people can get involved in. And then the more people who get involved in it, the simpler it's getting, right? So then it becomes this kind of like a virtuous cycle. So I think, yeah, it's a changing definition. I'm very excited by the change, of course. But it's, as we build it out, it will hit every single different type of organization, every different type of business as they become, I guess, AI and data driven. So.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And although, yeah, as we said, it is definitely an umbrella term, each of you did have a different answer as to what AI was to you specifically. And so I guess that leads me on to my next question. Where do you feel in each of your individual industries, the AI industry going forward, and also where it's come from, both for women in the industry and in general?
I'll give you the industry view because I actually get to work with a lot of companies doing this sort of thing. So pretty much every industry is looking at how do we become data driven, right? And it's a really common problem, and it's really, really hard to solve for traditional businesses, right? They're the ones who struggle because they've got this legacy of technical debt, and they're like, we want to do all of the cool stuff with AI, but it's really hard to overcome where they've been and where they are. Where things are moving the fastest is digital native businesses, and businesses where there's just a lot of data that's generated. So retailers, especially like internet-based retailers, where they'll be generating like billions of transactions a day, bringing all of this data in, and all of a sudden, like the thing with machine learning is you need a lot of data to build models, right? So those companies are exponentially getting an advantage because they're able to build these digital native cloud-based systems. They're bringing in lots and lots of data. They're learning so much about their customers. They're building these models, and they're getting smarter and smarter all the time. So they'll start to be like, I think, even more of a divide between traditional companies who are trying to adopt data and AI and the digital natives. Maybe we'll get to a data and AI native type of company soon, I'm not sure.
Who knows?
Yeah, completely agree with Tracy. It's incredible. And sort of taking that to my industry and sort of building on what I said earlier. So FloodMapp, we do flood forecasting. And, you know, it's crazy to think that today we kind of live in this world where people, you know, just recently there was a hurricane that hit the US, and 40 people died, a lot of them in basement apartments because they didn't have any warning that the flood was coming or to get out. And this is 2021, but the reason is because it's this antiquated industry where models are, dated, and the traditional hydrology and hydraulics approaches to modelling to forecast floods, this industry hasn't yet caught up to be able to even cope with the amount of data we have. So, we've been measuring water levels since, like 100 years and rainfall for 100 years, sometimes more in different places. But no one has yet, because it's all been so manual, no one's really been able to apply models to really see the trends and apply them at scale. And I think that's where it's really disrupting my industry across civil engineering, flood forecasting in particular, flood modeling. And I think the interesting thing is, I'm seeing a real shift from physics-based models where, engineers have applied models that use second-order differential equations and apply a high degree of physical maths, but then the inputs going into these models are just kind of assumptions because we just don't know. But now we're seeing, well, actually we do know what the inputs are because we have so many sensors, and since the cost of sensors is coming down, so there's more data, and then that's where AI plays such a powerful role in being able to ingest all that data, see patterns we didn't see before, to ultimately have a better outcome for humanity.
Thanks. So I think in the area of universities, so we have a role in research and also in training and also engagement with external partners. And see with the external partners too, from the outside looking at that, I see a lot of the walls going down because I see that we need to have the partnerships with to make a good AI or good analysis and a tool. We need to have that real coalition between people with different skill sets, and so I see it going, and also the kinds of problems that different organisations are facing, the challenges are very similar across organisations. And so the kind of silos that I'm talking about are the ones where you can you can talk to an organisation which is a hospital, and then you can talk to a bank, and you can talk to an ag company, and they're all facing the same kinds of problems, and they need the same kinds of tools. And those tools are being developed by groups that would have traditionally been different entities within a university. So you see computer science and maths and business and engineering, and software engineering, and they're all coming together to be able to address these challenges. And also then the tools that are being developed in those areas, there is this real richness now in the kind of methods and the algorithms that we can develop because of the computational tools that we have, and because of this kind of learning from each other as well. So I see that this great demand that we have in data and data science is really driving both the engagement with organisations and driving research and driving education as well. So we see, there's this huge demand for data science, and I was talking to the Bureau of Statistics. So Bureau of Statistics, you think of as being, oh my goodness, that must be the most traditional organisation. They do the census and that kind of stuff. They are seriously looking at doing some really cool stuff. They want to know how to use satellite data, point of sale data, mobile phone data, so that you don't have to fill out the survey. So how do they do that? So you see these, and they're talking about the great need that they have for data scientists, and that's AI and other things other than just traditional statisticians. So that's a real, I think, identifier for the kind of future that we're looking at. So there's a lot of training. I think also that we have this, what's also happened in our field in AI, and then I'll stop talking. But I think also the thing about what we have with this demand now is a different way of doing education. So some of it's through universities as before, but so much of it is through alternative forms of education, online learning and other kinds of training. And so it gives everybody the opportunity to be upskilling and to be learning from these different ways. And I see that's a really big trend that's going to really revolutionise how we do education. And the saying that data science is not about the data, and really, so I think it's something that is a really exciting future.
I definitely agree. And on the skills there, you mentioned there is that need for more people going into the AI industry, what are those skills that you would say, like both soft and technical skills? And if people are wanting to upskill, where should they look to go, or what kind of platforms should they become familiar with to upskill within the industry?
I've got a point of view. So part of my job is I run a training practice as well. And so daily I'll have conversations with companies who'll be like, we need more data scientists. How can you take our teams that we've got and turn them into data engineers or data scientists or machine learning? Or how can you make our people more like your people, right? So there is just huge demand that is out there. And I think there's a real willingness as well of companies to invest in education. But I was actually, I met with one of our new data scientists who's just started working in our team earlier this week. And we have this tradition because we're in COVID times, right? So it's really hard to kind of build teams and build networks. So we have like, casual coffee catch-ups. And I was asking her, I'm like, so like, tell me about your background. How did you get here? And she was like, oh, well, I'm actually a plant and animal biologist. But I realized I really didn't like what I was doing. And what I loved doing was data. And so she was like, just started doing more data, started going to hackathons and meetups, started using the MOOCs, like things online where you can just go and educate yourself, and now she's a data scientist. Like, how awesome is that? I was like, that's such a good story.
Very cool.
It is a really cool story, right? So, I mean, I guess there's a couple of things here. One is like a lot of people go through like university, you get a degree, you go out into the workforce and you're like, oh, this isn't really what I thought it was going to be, right? And that's okay. Because the whole thing is once you're in the workforce, there are so many opportunities. And if you put your hand up and say, I'm interested in something, particularly if it's data, most organizations, because this is such a nascent discipline still, most organizations will give you a go. So lots of resources out there. If you're going to learn to code, learn something like Python, learn some SQL. They're probably the easiest languages, and most of the tools are going towards them now. It's good to understand how to do that, but also like there's a whole diversity around AI. It's not just about machine learning. It's also about understanding the business, being a business SME. That's like your background, right? Oh, you model as well, but knowing about the business and knowing about the technology, understanding how do you make something usable for people, right? What's the use of a model has to be called by an application that has to have a business purpose to be useful. So there's a whole different range of, I think, careers around AI outside of just data science. But data science is super hot right now, just saying.
Heard it here first.
Super hot. I totally agree with everything you said, Tracy, and I'm definitely out of my depth with this question because I'm not a data scientist. I'm a flood engineer. Yeah, exactly. But I'm going to point you all in the direction to talk to Rob later after this panel, who's one of our incredible data scientists. I think, in the early days, I did do some of the Fast AI courses that Rachel and Jeremy Howard, they founded Fast AI. I found that in an incredible sort of like whirlwind 101 course into the world of AI and machine learning. And I think, from just talking to our team, what we're learning is it's not just about the machine learning or the data science, but yeah, having strong Python foundations has been super, super valuable. And knowing then how to like deploy and manage the models on infrastructure. So knowing tools about like ML flow, that's been super, super useful stuff as well. And there is so much online to just like teach yourself to get familiar with it and go on the journey.
Yeah, thanks. So I think there are these core skills we know in the data analysis and coding is really important. And I think also the one of the ways that we've been looking at trying to utilise the online material. So for the United Nations, they coming back to the Bureau of Statistics, and I promise I won't talk about them all night, but they're getting a good play here. But the United Nations is the umbrella organisation for official statistics agencies around the world in every country. And all of these agencies want to upskill in data science, in the new ways of analysing data. So how do they do that? And so if you think about it, then there is this online material that they could do, and they can also have courses, bespoke courses, but there's on this online material. So And this also applies for them, and it also applies for the students that are coming into our team, where you go, okay, what are your skill sets now? And so we can say, okay, it's in coding, and it's in statistics, and it's in modelling, or it's in whatever the skill sets are that we say, and in communication, and we have to have those kinds of other skill sets around our technical skills. And then you say, okay, where do you want to get to? So what do you want to be good at? And then you say, okay, well, let's give these things a score down the bottom, and let's give these things a score where you want to get to. And then we can look, if we build a database, imagine that we have a database of the reputable courses with the different kinds of traits of those courses, attributes of those courses, then you can match from where you are now to where you want to get to, and you can build a bespoke, like shopping cart, basically, put this course in and put this course in, and you can come up with your own program that's going to get you from where you are now to where you want to get to. So we're trying that kind of thing as well with a nice interface and building that. So we're hoping that will allow people to have a guide through the morass of courses that are available online.
I'm sure it will. It's really a successful program, which I'm sure a lot of people will get a lot of benefit out of. And although I know all of you spoke about how the industry is increasing and there is more potential for it, but what were the challenges that you found, especially as a female going into the industry, even though there is those support networks and catch-ups and programs like the bespoke one? Were there challenges you found going into the AI industry?
So I'll start because I've got the mic. But one thing I wanted to say too about there's certainly the meetups. So like I'm plugging the Queensland AI Hub as well. So there's meetups, but there's also these opportunities to meet with organisations. So I think that this kind of these kinds of meetups, so Women in AI, are really important. But then also there's the Queensland AI Hub and the opportunities to meet with industry partners and to get that broader perspective of what do we need. So that was just part of the tail of the last question. But I think for the so what was the question?
The challenges as a female going into the AI.
Okay, so I'm terrible at this one because I've really had a great time in my life. So I started at university, and then I didn't really know what I was going to do at uni. So I was actually going to be a vet when I left school, but I grew up in the country and I didn't want to go to the city because there was too many people in the city. So I had to go to Sydney to be a vet. I grew up in New South Wales, Western New South Wales. And so I said, okay, I'll do 1 year of science. So I'm standing in the science line, and my friend was standing in the accounting and business line. And I said, Fiona, you can't be an accountant. Like, that's so boring. She said, I'm going to travel the world and make lots of money. I thought, that sounds like a good idea. So I took a step to the left and enrolled in business instead of science. And that was my great life decision, because you get told, like, have a plan, and there's no plan. So anyway, I did first year business and figured that the only thing I didn't understand in first year, the thing I didn't understand a lot of things, but the thing I really didn't understand was stats. So I took myself off to the stats and maths and computing, because computing was just sort of kicking off, and enrolled there because I figured I should learn something more about this thing I didn't understand. So that's why I ended up in stats and computing. So anyway, here I am, like, doing this big sort of circle thing, and computing was really big. And one of my first vacation jobs was actually up here in Brisbane, working with the Commonwealth Bank, Bank of Queensland. And I'm pointing to Burton, who knows all about Bank of Queensland. So Bank of Queensland. And my job was to walk around each of the sections and ask people why they would want to have a computer on their desk. And I wish that I had that report that I'd written at the time. So that was, so you can imagine. So it was just this huge explosion of computing and that. So I finished university and I went to work in a statistical consulting company. And that was fantastic. It was commercial consulting. And I did that for a while. And then I ended up at Bond University, where Bond first opened its doors. And it was like this dream. What should a university look like? And I was just like, had my L plates on. And so I was listening to all these people like design a university from scratch. And then I went overseas and came back, and I've been in the university business ever since. So I think the challenges that I see are yeah, like you just got to like. I want to say everybody's got to work hard, but I think you've sort of got to just work a bit harder. But basically, I'm sports, so I can't really say how many challenges.
Super inspiring. I love that career story. That's the best. I'm going to remember that. So challenges for me, that's a good question. I think thinking through it, probably, yeah, imposter syndrome has been massive. I definitely know I've really struggled with it. And I think it's a bit of a result of the fact that like the whole industry of AI, if you like, is so new and growing so rapidly. And I, have already said I'm not a data scientist. I don't do AI every day. Like I am a flood engineer, so I've come from this kind of like civil engineering, flood engineering bucket and come across to sort of like AI. I went to a few of the AI events early on and I just felt so overwhelmed and out of my depth because I felt like I didn't belong in this bucket either, but nor did I belong in my other bucket anymore because I'd left them behind and was telling them that now I was going to do their jobs with AI and they kind of hate me. So just feeling like I didn't belong and just struggling with imposter syndrome was massive. But just I think I've tackled that with doing a lot of reading up on it about imposter syndrome and realizing that we all suffer from it. Everyone does. It's just that no one talks about it, and realizing that that's really a value. Like we've all come from these different backgrounds. Like I love that story Tracy told about the bioscientist. That a lot of people are coming into this field from not a traditional path where they do, science and data science, and then they're an AI expert. Like people are coming in from all these different areas, and we all belong, and that's the value of the community because it's so diverse and with, diverse backgrounds and skills and people, women, different genders, cultural backgrounds. Like it's a huge bonus, and it's what will make this field so amazing. So in the end, I'm turning it into a positive really, but that was my challenge.
That's I can relate to that one as well. I'm not a data scientist either. I just like working with really amazing people, and so that's more my background is like I started in technology. I actually started an IT degree in QUT in the 90s. I didn't finish it. So for a very, very long time, I had a chip on my shoulder, and the reason I didn't finish it was because I found it frustratingly linear, let's call it that, where everything was super prescriptive, and so there wasn't a lot of opportunity to make things better, right? And so I ended up dropping out of university and became a graphic designer and travelled the world for a number of years, and then all of a sudden web design came up and I got back into technology again. But I realized really quickly that I'm not that good at technology, like actually doing the technology, but I really understand it. And I'm very, very good at working with people who are really good at technology. And those people aren't always really good at working with other people. So there's a yes in the audience there. So there's like a superpower. So my imposter syndrome was always like, I'm not actually very good at technology. And I often say to people that I work with, I'm like, I'm not very technical. And they're like, yes, you are. But I'm actually not. And so in a way, it's like flipping. At some point in time, I think I flipped my imposter syndrome into a humility and an appreciation for actually just getting to be around really cool people, and everyone has different strengths, and that's like the benefit of like working in teams. So I found my space by doing that, by working, I guess, with other people. Now I've forgotten what the question was, but
Challenges.
Challenge. Being a women in AI. I actually think to some extent. So I kind of, I won't say I fell into AI. It was a very deliberate choice. I really wanted to work in AI, so I sought out the opportunities. But it's an extension of a career in technology, and I actually found that to some extent, and maybe this is just because of the generation that I am coming through the industry, it was beneficial to me because I thought differently about things. And so because of that, I had a really accelerated career path.
So I want to pick up on that point too, because I think that there is a difference in how all of us think, but also a difference in the way that we can approach problems, and I think that richness that we bring when we have the diversity in a workplace is really important. And I think that there is still, even though we're sitting here and we've had we're having these careers, but there is this really big issue that there's only still, despite all of the efforts that have gone on to trying to increase the number of women in the different component areas of AI, that it's still around 20-odd%. And so you think, well, that's just 1 in 5 people who are in an organisation in an area of data science. It's going to be a woman in that area, and so that means that there's many areas where there's just that one person, and that's sometimes a very tough gig. So I think sometimes that's a tough thing when there's just one of you, which is why then it's really important to have these kinds of get-togethers. And I think the other thing is staying there. So one of the really big issues is the staying power through the whole of our lives in a career, because there's a lot of pressure about life in general, having a life and things that happen, and it can be family, but it can also be parents, and it can be changes in all sorts of things that can happen. And so having that ability not just to attract women into the job and to give them a good workplace, but also to retain them. And I think that that's a really big thing. And so, the staying power that we need, all of us need, but I think for women in many ways, that's really a big issue.
I definitely agree, and that leads well on to our next question, which you've all mentioned that there's been an increase in community within the AI fields, which has helped you in your individual ways, and again with the retention of women in the field. What do you feel that could be done to further make sure that once they're in the field that there is that community for them and they want to stay and progress with a career in the AI field?
Yeah, great question. I think, communities like this are amazing, like the Women in AI community, the Queensland AI Hub. I think this is awesome because this is just, I see it as such, great potential of a place that can increase training opportunities for people coming into this field, and then being able to kind of stick at it and not, giving up because they feel like, they're not good enough or have imposter syndrome or get distracted by something else, but can kind of see that everyone in the community is also, having the same challenges and learning, and there are people who can support them, and that if they're, not liking maybe the particular job that they're in, find those mentors that can help them, sort of, as Carrie alluded to earlier, map out their career path of where they want to get to, and then help connect them with opportunities that can get there. I think just communities like this is so valuable.
Yeah, completely agree with both of you. And these are our communities as well. So I think it's really important to remember that, the community is what we make it. So if we all get involved and we all do something, you don't necessarily have to wait for someone else to do it. Participation is hard, and even organizing meetups is hard, and getting sponsors and getting speakers. There's a lot of effort that goes into these, speaking as a former reformed meetup organizer. So when people do take the time to do it, it's great as well when people come out and actually support it. The mentoring, I think, is a really important point, particularly around career and career development. To have a mentor that may or may not be within your organisation is useful. But also around job prospects. It's so much easier to get a job when you're connected to someone in an organisation who can, help you navigate that, than it is to kind of just send a CV somewhere and hope for the best. That's a lesson that it took me a really, really long time to learn. So yeah, take advantage of your networks as well, or build your networks if you don't have them, if you're still early in your career.
So we've just proposed a centre of excellence in data science, and it's all women chief investigators and associate investigators from across the country, and we're hoping that will then increase the opportunities for women and the recognition of what women are doing, amplify the research that women are doing in data science. So hopefully that'll get up. But I also want to say that we're in just the perfect job, in data science and AI right now. I mean, firstly, there's uncertainty, right? So we all know that what we're doing, we make predictions, but they're under uncertainty, which gets us out of so much trouble. You know, like, I mean, if we don't do a good job in predicting something, well, that's just the uncertainty about it, you know. So it's great. We've got a job for life, you know. There's uncertainty in everything. So, you know, we're right there. The other thing is that we're in data science, and so the world is changing so quickly in our field that even like if you say, oh, I do Python, if somebody says that and you don't know what Python is, it's like, tell me about Python, you know, because like we can be confident that we just don't know everything. And so we can always ask, you know, and I think that's really the big thing. It's part of this imposter syndrome that you sometimes you feel like, oh, maybe I shouldn't ask, or maybe I shouldn't try because like everybody else knows that. No, they don't. So, you know, so I think we're just in this really good position that the world is changing so fast in our field, it's always okay to ask, no, or say, I don't know about that.
I definitely agree. I always ask, even the silly questions, but it definitely helps a lot. And in terms of for the future for the AI field, how important do you think for younger children at schools, like getting them into Python and R and all that coding language really early? Do you think that'll have a massive impact going forward with the wave of kind of next females within the industry and males, but
Yes. I think it's really, it's fun for kids to do this stuff. And I think it's also, and I mean, we should be asking people like you guys, because, yeah. But I think that, I think it's fun. And I also think that it's good skills, not just to learn the skill sets, but to learn the thinking that goes around coding.
Yeah, 100%. All those kids should be coding every day at school. When I was in primary school, yeah, there were no computers. When I was in high school, there was computers, and I was starting to submit assignments like on Word and then save them on a floppy disk and then print them out and then submit them. And then, but even like there wasn't many computers at my uni, and I remember getting into the first year at university, and I went into engineering, so having used Microsoft Excel was just like a standard assumption that everyone knew, but I still didn't. I was kind of behind the curve, and so I had to do a catch-up course just to learn. It was like a rapid course just to understand how to use Microsoft products. And now, like, I feel like kids coming through, you know, it's sort of going to be like, you know, for what was my sort of Microsoft Office, it's like coding is just going to be an assumed, you know, skill in, you know, 20 years. I don't know what time. I have a much, much younger brother than me, so he's just finishing his HSC right now. And when he was in kind of high school and primary school, yeah, they did bits of coding in their kind of computer studies. Even in primary school, they were doing this cool like little robot thing that they were like programming with some interactive like programming thing. And I was like, man, I wish I learned that at primary school.
that sounds fun. I wish I had that.
I know, yeah. I just feel like my calling wasn't there when I was at school, because I just think like it's such a critical skill for them to have Python all the way.
Yeah, I mean, why wouldn't you learn how to code? It's like, it makes it easier. I think everything's easier when you learn it when you're younger. When I decided I was going to study IT at university, it's because I didn't know what I wanted to do. And I was like, I'll just do IT for a year or two. Like, it's not going to hurt. Even though I never finished the degree, self-confessed before, it's probably one of the best decisions that I ever made, because IT is everywhere. And so our lives are just going to get more interactive. So absolutely, anyone who can learn to code early, worth doing. I'm going to be controversial and counter that though, with a contrary view, which is we're moving towards low code, right? So we're moving now, and you see it in machine learning as well. AutoML is here, it's coming. It's sometimes, some people might say it's better than some data scientists. So like there are a lot of tools that are making it easier and easier for things like citizen data scientists as well. So I think part of the benefit that coding brings is an actual ability to logically break things down. And so to deconstruct concepts and ideas into modular parts. And that's effectively what it is. And that kind of thinking is useful regardless of whether you end up coding using words or coding using like blocks and low code.
Love it.
And so in terms of, although there is this wave of pushing like children and females into the AI industry, how is your perspective on government support in terms of this industry? Because I know for the health industry in particular, they're unable to fully use the full capabilities of their AI systems due to the current regulations, which haven't been updated yet. So AI has kind of been held back through government, like old regulations. How would you say they are in your individual fields in terms of government support and keeping updated with what the potential for AI is?
That's a great question. I'll start off. I'm not even sure I know how to fully answer that. But in my field, I think it's very much, yes, regulation is still catching up. There's a lot of I don't know, I'd call it probably healthy skepticism about it, and that these systems really need to be tried and tested in rigorous proof of concepts, historical simulation before there's any kind of trust in being able to launch that live. But in terms of support, I would say actually there's a huge amount of support in grant funding at the early stages of doing an innovative business. So we've been super supported by Advanced Queensland getting a grant for commercialising this technology, as well as the Department of Industry, Science and Technology at the federal level through Oz Industry, the Accelerating Commercialisation Grant. We were able to receive 770,000 in matched funding government support to build out our platform and hire people to build this technology. So I would say there's sort of a lot of grant support to get these projects off the ground. But in terms of the industry adopting it, that's where we're finding I think there's a long way to go for a lot of government agencies to sort of get more comfortable with the technology and properly regulate it.
I don't actually know that I have an answer to that one. So I think regulation's important, I'll say that, because I mean, it's very new technology, and particularly when you're looking at things like decision-assisted AI models, I think we have to be, there needs to be a level of, I guess, awareness or oversight there, particularly around, you don't want your models to be inscrutable. You want to be able to actually understand what data did I use to train this model, how did I get to that decision? So I think regulation's important. Does it need to be updated? Yeah, probably, but I don't have a more informed position on that, sorry.
Yeah, thanks. I guess I agree. There are regulations that are really important, and especially around, as you were saying, we all know of the algorithms that are biased, algorithms that are built on data that don't represent the whole population. So, but also there's all the privacy around data as well, and I think that's really coming to the fore. So, data privacy, data sovereignty, and so access to data, especially health data for researchers, is really a big issue, because obviously you want to protect the privacy, but also in doing so, then there's the challenge of being able to do good research, because you don't have access to those data. And it's not just health research, it can be all sorts of data. So then and not just research, then it can also be for other industries who want to work, to do their job. And so I heard a really chilling stories about, domestic violence and children dying because there's not the sharing of data between organisations. I know that sounds like it's really sensationalist, but this was the context of the conversation. And so agencies not sharing data because they've got the walls up because of privacy, and even within an organisation not being able to share between the sections of the organisation. And because of that, then there's only partial information. So decisions are being made and models are being built on partial information. And because of that, then people would have made different decisions if they'd had access to the full data, the full knowledge. So there's this sort of tension, obviously, between wanting to have enough information to be able to build, more complete models, and more complete analysis and insight, but also then being able to safeguard privacy and sovereignty. And I think that's really where the challenge is for the next little while.
I agree, definitely a chicken and egg situation with having the trust to let AI run its course, but also to have the current regulations in and not let that happen, so you can't see the full potential of it. And finally, before we wrap up for the panelists, I'm just gonna, until Q&A, I'll ask the final, what one piece of advice would you give someone or give a woman early in their career moving into the AI field?
That's a good question. I'd say just have a go. And if it interests you, talk to people who are doing it in the field and understand, like, what kind of, job that they do, what their day-to-day looks like, what kind of tools they use, and get a picture for if you think that's something that you would enjoy. And if it is, then yeah, go after it, or, talk to some other people. And I think there's not one single job in AI. Like, my job in AI, I see myself as very much, I'm the CEO and co-founder at FloodMapp, so it's very much the connector. So I'm really sort of like seeking funding for the company and trying to communicate our problem and solution and company vision to investors and to governments and customers, and then connect that to the talent and hiring the best team. And so, if you have a vision to sort of, go and found your company, go and talk to other co-founders. If you see yourself as maybe being interested in like product management, go and talk to other product managers. I think you'd learn so much from that about where you want to go in your own career.
Yeah, that was perfect. I would say just do it. Be curious, figure out what you want to do, and just go and do it. Yeah, be brave.
How do you follow that? Yeah, I agree. Just go do it. But I was going to ask, can I ask one question? Who in the audience learnt to code when you were in primary school? Who in the audience learnt to code when you were in high school? Some? And not many. Okay, great. That's interesting. Okay, thank you. In university? Yes. Yeah. Who learnt to code in university? Some, but not everybody. Okay, and who learnt to code by themselves? You? Yeah. Okay, great. All right, thank you. That's very interesting. So piece of advice. I agree. Find mentors, find your community, get support, and just go for it.
A beautiful summation. Thank you for that advice. And so now we'll move on to a Q&A session for the audience. So do we have any questions to start us off for tonight? Oh, do we have some online questions? Yeah. Fantastic.
Of course. Just before that. Well, of course, thank you so much for this wonderful discussion. My question is related to the women in AI. So I'm really curious to learn from you and from the audience. What would be your advice to be able to take this discussion about diversity and inclusion from Brisbane to the regional Queensland? And what do you think we can do together so we can bring more of the women that are developing AI, or they're interested to do so from region, to connect with those here in Brisbane? And what would be the role that women in AI can play in facilitating this and working together with all of us?
You ask hard questions. I'm going to pass it to someone else because I don't have an answer.
It is a great question. I was thinking the same thing when Adriana was asking it. That's a hard question. But I think just in terms of, if I look at my journey of founding the company and where I've sort of learned a lot and met the most people, it's networking events are incredible. If there's sort of a big event where, we make an effort to invite people from regional Queensland, northern, from Cairns and Townville, to something like, maybe it's like an all-day event or festival or something that people are going to make the effort to come and meet people here. I think that's always incredible. And the other thing I've found super valuable during COVID, I think a lot of us have struggled working from home and feeling quite isolated, is like Slack channels have been incredible communities to meet people and connect. And I've just joined another one recently that I'm loving. I have too many Slack channels I'm part of, but there's this My Climate Journey, which is all about people that want to work in jobs related to climate change. And it's a great example of this global community. It has like thousands of members, and they have like quite a structured sort of onboarding process of how you onboard and enter the community. Like it's almost like a physical place, but it's online. So you introduce yourself and wave and you say, hi, I'm Juliette, this is what I do. And instantly all these people connected to me and said, wow, it's great to meet you. I think I need to introduce you to this person. You need to know what my company's doing because it relates. And I was overwhelmed by just the inclusion and diversity and acceptance in that channel. So that might be another good idea.
Yeah, they're great ideas. I think there's also the opportunity because there are great companies like FloodMapp, but also and companies that have been and startups that have been set up by rural women and women in regions. And so I'm thinking, a shout out to Black Box. So Black Box is an agricultural livestock company that's set up by two women in northern Queensland. And so, finding these companies and actually having them, we have great online opportunities now. So having panel sessions with these people. And so we find out also who are these cool women doing cool stuff in regional areas and what kinds of issues are they facing and what are they doing? So Black Box, for example, is aggregating data from different properties from different farmers and putting it together in a database and then feeding that back to farmers about their cattle. And this is the first time that these farmers have sort of seen that kind of information. So great organisation by two young women. And so these kinds of, having that kind of opportunity for us in the city to hear about those people in the bush is really good. And I think that opportunity also to have panel sessions about issues that are facing different regions as well. So what's happening in Bundaberg, and so if there's a possibility to have a panel session from people in Bundy and I mean, obviously in the university sector, then we don't do enough of this, but what's happening up at the university in Rockhampton and Toowoomba and so on. So we should be doing more of those kinds of connections as well.
Did we have any questions from the room or question in the back?
Thank you. Hello everyone. My name is Ivy, and I have just graduated from my master degree in IT from QUT. Yes. So my question is that I understand that currently a lot of companies are trying to utilize more machine learning and also employ more data scientists in their company. But what I find is as well is that a lot of machine learning algorithms, it ends up not being utilized or not being going to productions. So my question is, how are we going? What's your view on these situations, and also how can we improve the confidence for the company so that they are willing to utilize the machine learning that has been built? Thank you.
Okay, I can take that one. And then I'm going to pass over to you to talk about MLflow from a tool perspective. But so part of the issue with machine learning models not making it into production is a lot of data scientists will run things on their own machines, right? They're not necessarily collaborating. They'll have fixed data sets. The maturity around let's say the governance and the infrastructure just isn't there. So I'm going to plug an open source tool called MLflow, which is just one example, and there are many. And that's a tool that was created by Databricks, which is the company that I work for. And so what that does is machine learning lifecycle. So it actually does version controlling of models. You can hook it into things like a Delta Lake, and you can use time travel to go back and have a look at, here was the data at this point in time, and that's the version that I built of that model. And now I'm going to go through and put it through a regression testing process, serve it out, and have version 1.0 in production. And hey, we know that's a good model because we can run it and we can see that it's got a level of that we're comfortable with in terms of the accuracy of the model, right? So there are tools out there now that you can start to do that with. It's just around getting the maturity and the practice, similar to like DevOps, like 5 or 10 years ago, where it really brought the discipline around testing and releasing code to production, and then it slowed things down for a little while, but then once it was in and everyone knew how to use it, you get continuous deployments and things run really, really fast. So I think we're getting into that whole ML ops space now, where teams just need to have that discipline of actually managing the models, version controlling the models, training the models, etc. And that will bring the business confidence to get there. But yeah, so many companies don't move models into production. It's quite surprising. Clearly, very surprising.
Yeah, this is super actually eye-opening to me and super surprising, because I think, I mean, for us, it's just like being our sort of company strategy from early on that we wanted to do a project where we used machine learning to tackle hydrological flood forecasting. And it was our whole kind of goal to achieve. But I'm learning more and more now that, yeah, apparently there are lots of like bigger companies that maybe run a lot of like more kind of research and development around this model production. And I think what we've learned, yeah, is exactly as Tracy said, that there is this whole kind of life cycle. It's one thing to have a Jupyter notebook on someone's machine, testing some models, but it's a totally other thing to put that into production. And that takes so much, support from the software and the infrastructure and all the, containers and mechanisms to drive that model and run it on the cloud and run it at scale as well. So I think I would just say the company sort of has to have the strategy there and the support there in place to have that architecture to support the teams and really decide, is this just a research and development project, or are we going to actually support the production? And then if that decision is there, I think there's all the tools to be able to make that happen. And I think the last thing I'd say, again, sort of comes down to the company strategy of really deciding like what exactly you're trying to achieve, like what you're trying to forecast or what you're trying to predict, and then what your performance metrics and confidence levels are for that model and its accuracy. So for example, we sort of made the decision when we're setting out, okay, we want to be able to forecast 24 hours out, and we want it to be in this range of the flood peak is we're going to call acceptable accuracy, whether it's like room mean square error or R squared or Nash-Sutcliffe efficiency, whatever your metric is, sort of decide that, and then it has to be a management decision. Yep, okay, it's ready, and let's deploy it.
Thank you. Are there any other questions?
Hello. My name is Mila. And what do you guys do? Well, because obviously, like, you're here, so you're actually doing something for us, like women or men or whatever, to make a change, like coming here and like giving your time, and you in the data science center of excellence. I think that's brilliant. Do you guys like talk to seniors, to companies, to within your companies, and if your company doesn't have this kind of like culture, which I think you guys do you talk to other peers or people that you are related to and then say, hey, you need to do something, or like, I've been doing this, I've been giving my time, I've been networking with people that are looking for a job like me, they're juniors, they're changing careers, they're here, and I think, I'm not too sure if it's the word that you wanted to say was actually like being commercial, like commercializing something, which I think it's like AI, it's a niche, and there are a few companies in Brisbane in Australia. So, like, do you talk to seniors, like to close to Jesus, like people? Because I feel like these guys are not doing blah, not to say another word. So there's a lot of education going on, because I've been a senior in another career. Sorry, I'm talking directly to you, but it's to all of you. But I've been a senior in another career, and when we are closer to this level, we can actually make a change and encourage and giving your time. but most of the companies are not doing this. They only think about, is this ML? Is this AI? Is this a buzzword? Oh, great, we're going to use it. And then I call them, okay, do you guys do AI? Not really. So do you feel like, honestly, that these guys are slowly making a change and we are in the DevOps 5-10 years? Or it will take more than 5-10 years? Because I'm getting old. So, yeah.
That's a really good question, Mila. I am probably going to like get Tracy's thoughts on this too. Like, it's a great point, and I talk to a lot of seniors in like startups. Like, I think I talk to heaps of CEOs and co-founders, and like a lot of them are doing, you know, AI. Like, it's very like sort of happening really rapidly all the time. And it seems to be that there is a lot of like job opportunities out there from the kind of startups and smaller companies I'm talking to. But it's a really good point that, you know, like I'm not talking to the GMs of like, I don't know, like Deloitte and the Big Four, or like big, you know, mining companies, or any of these like CEO or exec suites. And I know that they, yeah, like I am seeing a lot of branding that everyone's doing AI these days, but I probably like am not seeing enough of like what's actually going on in their company to know like whether just how much of that is reality in their operations and how much is buzzwords. Yeah, so maybe Tracy can.
Yeah, I talk to heaps of senior people. So, yeah. And look, everyone, like, okay, so AI is, and ML is the vision of where everyone wants to get, right? And so what you see is a lot of people will run some innovation. It'll be like, hey, check this model out. This is awesome. Let's try and get this into production. And then they'll be like, oh, look at our data. We need more data. We need a lot more data. We better spend some time doing data engineering. And so the reality is the vast majority of companies who are, say, looking to adopt AI and ML, they're in the data engineering phase of that journey, right? So they're like, let's get the data in, let's get it clean, put it in a data lake, put it in a lake house, and then we can get the business value of starting to build machine learning models on top of it. Because until you've got all the data, your models aren't really going to be very good. So when I spoke before, like earlier tonight, and I was talking about, you know, the digital natives versus the enterprises, they're all the senior people you're talking about, right? They want to be doing this stuff, but it's a journey for them to get there. So if they're looking for people right now, they're looking for data engineers, like probably 3 data engineers for every 1 data scientist, that sort of a ratio. So yes, it's happening. I'd say it's probably within 5 years for most companies. And it'll be within certain niches. So it'll be around things like specific use cases, customer 360, so organizations who just need to know their customers better, fraud detection, anomaly detection. There's a huge amount of really interesting stuff going on in the energy sector right now. Just a lot of data being generated, but also as things become a little bit more open. So there's things like open banking that's happening. There's things like 5-minute settlements, which are regulated for energy providers. And all of these things are really reliant on really good quality data at high speeds. And as a consequence of that, there is going to be enough data to start building really interesting models on top of it. So it comes down to kind of like the industry you're looking at and the sector that you're looking at. And then, like I said earlier, the digital natives just have a really big advantage. So cloud-first companies would be a really good place to look for active work in ML.
I think that's right, but it's actually surprising because I do find some organisations, like some health community service, like just in the last 2 weeks, a community health service, and also a biosecurity group that biosecurity group that have got themselves IT people, have got their data organised, and are now looking for, now that we've got it, what do we do with it? And so they're actually they're ready for the data scientist, if you want, the analyst to come in. But the thing is that they don't know what questions to ask. They don't know what their data is going to tell them. And so there's a little bit of the learning how to answer some of their immediate questions, but also then help them to understand what their questions are. So I think it's coming, and it can be in different entities, but you know, it's on its way.
Are we out of time? Hello. Are we out of time for questions now, or any? Oh, and online questions. Okay. Any last question to finish off the night? If not, could we please give a massive round of applause to our fantastic panelists? I don't know about you, but I've learned a lot tonight in the space of AI and where the field is going, and it is very positive, and I'm looking forward to seeing where it leads to. So thank you very much for your time tonight, and I'll pass back to Adriana.
Thank you so much for Sally, please. Incredible job. And thank you once again so much for your time coming here and sharing with us your journeys. And I would like to also thank very much Queensland AI Hub and Databricks for supporting this event. And we're planning to have similar events once every 3 months. And this one, as the introductory one, we wanted it to be quite general, and we wanted to have a very diverse panel from diverse industries, but we're really welcoming your suggestions on how to design the next event. If you will be interested, for instance, to dive deeper into the cloud questions and have women that are working with the cloud to share the panels, we can do that. If you like to talk more about general questions on how to build a career, please just send us your suggestions and we will definitely take them into account. And if you have suggestions for speakers as well, or of course a stellar student to moderate the next panel, please let me know. And I'm also going to ask you to bear with me for the next 10 minutes because I want to share with you another extremely exciting opportunity that Women in AI at the national level is providing. And that's our Women in AI Awards that are going to take place on the 31st of March in Melbourne. And the applications are now open. So with a bit of background, Women in AI Awards are really looking for female innovators in the field of AI from both Australia and New Zealand. And we're looking for women who are taking the roads that are less traveled, the women who are really paving the way to others to reach even further and to dare to dream even bigger. So the awards last year had only 11 categories, but this year we have categories ranging from health, mining, law, finance, agribusiness, cybersecurity, to new categories such as creative industry, sports, and climate. And if you feel that none of this category is really fitting your project and the work that you're doing, then we have AI in innovation. Trust us, wherever you are going to present to us, if you're making the case, there will be a space for you. More importantly, no matter what sectors you're coming from, industry, government, university, NGO, also there is also a place for you in these awards. And we talked and we started this conversation today about what AI is and what is not. So here there is a list of all the different AI technologies that the projects last year covered, from natural language processing to Internet of Things to robotics, so machine learning. So again, I'm pretty sure that wherever you're working in, there will be a way for you to argue that you are deserving one of our awards. So this year we have over $30,000 in prize that we're giving, $12,000 to the winner, and then we have first runner-up, second runner-up, and this year we have a trailblazer. And here is a picture with the incredible winners of last year. But this year, applications are going to be celebrated at the National Gallery of Victoria on 31st of March 2022. And I'm sorry to put you on the spot, Juliette, but actually Juliette is one of the winners of last year in the category of mining. Would you mind sharing in 2 minutes some of your experience with the awards from last year?
Thank you so much, Adriana, really putting me on the spot here. Yeah, it was an incredible experience, actually. Sue Kay really encouraged me to apply. And when I saw it, I hadn't applied because I said, yeah, I don't do AI. The people in my company, you know, smart data scientists, like they're the ones doing AI. I'm not in AI. And she sort of like maybe helped me think about it in a different way. So I decided to put in an application, and it was a great application process. And just going to the awards themselves was such an incredible experience. I was just overwhelmed at all the amazing people I met with and connected there, and have now like connected with several of them since over Skype calls, and we keep in contact and we're all kind of connecting each other. And I just blown away to hear of the talented people and all the things that they were achieving in their fields. And then, yeah, to be named as a winner in the category and take home an award and get that recognition was just so overwhelming. I got really emotional on stage and said a few words. And it's been just that recognition has really helped FloodMapp and the business, and even connecting with other talented people in the industry. I think for recruitment, for sales, for investment, it's really sort of helped raise, you know, my whole profile and our whole profile. So I think I would 100% recommend everyone to apply and have a go. It's just such a great program.
Thank you so much. So if you know of any incredible woman that does work with AI, and please feel free to nominate, and also please apply yourself. And we're really looking forward to hearing your questions. So please come to me if you have any, but look around your teams, your network, and really encourage everyone to apply. If not, go ahead and nominate them, and the rewards are going to be really great. So now, to wrap up this event, once again, thank you everyone for your time, for coming and for sharing so much.